welcome to the run out. I am not the host. Let's try that again. I'm so used to saying I'm your host.
I know.
All right. Welcome. What is the name of the show? Jesus, why do I suck so bad today?
We're keeping all this in.
Welcome to the run out. I am Neil Barrett. That is Brandon Hooten. And we have a lot to talk about today, but Brandon, I know you moved this week. How has your weekend been, your week since the last time we talked?
It's been crazy. My body hurts all over. Work was a grind. I'll say that. But yeah, not at my house right now because we don't have internet. So that's been fun trying to get stuff uploaded, the last 24 hours. But can't complain, new beginnings, and hopefully I can create a space now that has a better background with cool decorations. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that one of these days I'll get some cool decorations behind me too. I got the lights. That's about all I can really do right now. I am going to try not to have to leave in the middle of this to go to the bathroom. We bought these, I don't know if you've ever had these circle things.
Oh yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah, so my boss at work, I was talking to him one day about like going to the gym and fitness and stuff, and I was telling him that I was like struggling getting water. So he was like, you should buy one of these. My work gives the like flavor thing. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And I have drank so much water since I got this thing that I'm just like constantly going to the bathroom. So I'm gonna try to get through this whole episode without having to stop and go to the bathroom. We'll see if I make it. But there is a lot to get into. So without further ado, let's get into it. First things first, this past week, the Tewaaraton Awards were handed out. On the women's side, the award went to Chloe Humphrey. She is the first freshman on the men or women's side to win the award. I hesitate to say this because I don't want it to come off as like hating on Chloe. I think she is an incredible player and in her own right was very deserving of winning the title or the award, I guess. But I find myself being a little frustrated at it feels like the Tewaaraton over the last, especially since like 2015 or so, has been kind of like the Heisman. It's much more about the story that can be told than about necessarily the best player. Chloe was 5th in the country in points. She was 3rd in the country in goals and not even in the top 30 in assists. And she didn't even lead her team in points. Her sister did, only by a couple, but it felt a lot like that 2015 men's Tewaaraton award going to Connor Fields instead of Lyle Thompson, because at least he led the nation in goals that year, but Madison Taylor for Northwestern had 40 more points. I don't think that stats need to be the end all be all in these conversations, but when someone has 40 more points than you, that's a substantial gap. She led the nation in goals and led her team Northwestern to the championship game where they met Chloe Humphrey. So I don't know. Again, I know Chloe was like good in her own right and kind of earned it, but I don't know. It just felt a little goofy handing it to someone who was kind of that far down the pecking list. And it felt like something that we did for the sake of the story of Chloe and being a freshman and winning it in that manner. So,
yeah, I'm with you. It'd be one thing if the gap in the numbers wasn't as big as it is. If it was, if we're talking 10 goals here, that's, whatever. But 40 goals is pretty substantial. And especially, it wasn't like you said Madison Humphrey had 40 more goals?
Had 40 more points.
Points. I don't want to misspeak here. Like, it wasn't like she missed out on going to the national championship. It's not like they didn't even make the tournament and, we're sitting here talking about someone who's, way down the list or anything. Like, so I'm with you. It's tough. Not saying Chloe Humphrey isn't deserving, obviously, but, I do think there is some storylines kind of being played into these types of awards. And I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was, I don't know. It was just something, again, I like Chloe Humphrey. I think she's going to be a great player, but it just, I don't know. It just felt a little weird. But on the men's side, the kind of no-brainer choice, obviously, was CJ Kirst. He did win the award, becoming the first player since Rob Pennell in 2013 from Cornell to win the award, and the third Cornell player to win the award overall in 2009. Max Sebald won it as a midfielder, which is crazy. I think he's the last midfielder. Someone can fact check me on that, but I think he is the last midfielder to win it all the way back in 2009. Not a ton to say about CJ winning it. That was pretty much on the cards from the jump this season. It was his award to lose from kind of the beginning from the start of the season. So not too much to really talk about in there. In fact, probably the bigger discussion, and this will kind of get into our kind of next topic, was that there was a lot of discussion this week and throughout the season, but especially this week after the national championship and the Tewaaraton Awards, about the legacy of both CJ Kirst and this Cornell men's team, with a lot of people saying that CJ Kirst is, one, that this was the best season ever in college lacrosse, two, that CJ Kirst may be the best player ever in college lacrosse. Excuse me, certainly that he deserves a place on the Mount Rushmore of college lacrosse, and that also there were a lot of comparisons with this Cornell team and some of the greatest college lacrosse teams in the history of the game. I think I saw a lot of comparisons to the 2024 Notre Dame team, the 2022 Maryland team. Some of them even went as far back as saying, the 1990 era Syracuse stuff. I think those comparisons can be a little bit tough. It's always tough in any sport comparing across like wildly different eras. Even LeBron, Michael Jordan is difficult to really talk about, and their eras, really overlapped, going all the way back to 1990 Syracuse. The game is wildly different. The game's wildly different from when I started playing in 2001. Like, it's crazy different. And so I don't know that I'm going to go all the way back to 1990 Syracuse and talk about it, but I'm wondering where you have maybe CJ, maybe Cornell, whichever one, kind of in terms of the history of or the legacy of those two.
Yeah, I don't know. It, like you said, it's always tough to compare just because it's going to be subjective no matter what. And it's especially tough, I just think, because there's been so many greats before him that if you say some of these names, like, it's really tough to be like, okay, we're bumping one of them off of the Mount Rushmore to put CJ. At least at this very moment. I'm sure in a few years, we'll look back and be like, okay, he was great year over year. But I think of like the Lyle Thompson years. Like, I don't think you're bumping Lyle. I mean, Chris Gray had an incredible career. Maybe you could bump him. I'm not totally sure. But I mean, I'm looking at this list here. At least over his career, there's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys ahead of him in the points category. So to me, like, the numbers kind of don't lie, generally speaking. So I think putting him on a Mount Rushmore at this very moment, I have to think more about it probably, but I don't know if I can put him up there with, the 4 best. But that's not to take away from, specifically this year. He's gotten better year over year, aside from, I think last year he only played like 67, or only had, I have it right here, let me see, 67 points. So he only played 14 games.
Yeah.
So aside from that dip, and that's only because of games played. So I'm sure if he played, 4 or 5 more games like he did the other 3 years, then maybe we're having a different conversation. But I think it's a bit early for me, especially coming off of the conversation we had last week about comparisons, and I just don't know if it's currently the right time to kind of put him up there with those guys.
Yeah, for me, it's, the Cornell as a team for me is not even a discussion. They lost a game, number one. They had several very tight, close games. I don't think that there's a discussion to be had there. For me, even in his specific era, not necessarily the 4 years that he was there, but in let's say the last eight or so years, where the game has been relatively consistent, not too much has really changed. The goal mouth is probably the only real major change to the rule set. So looking at that, in that period of time, I even in just that period of time, I have him, at the very highest, probably 6th amongst other guys. And that's not hate, because like you said, CJ is great. And again, he deserved everything that he got this year. So again, it's not about hate, but when we get into this level of upper echelon and literally rank, splitting the hairs of trying to rank these guys, I'm I don't see it. Lyle's 2014 season, he had almost 20 more points than CJ while playing on a significantly worse team. And a lot of people want to say, well, he won a championship, and I cannot bring championships. This is not basketball. Basketball, sure, we can talk about championships. The one player can literally win you a championship. You've seen that with Michael Jordan and LeBron James, and repeatedly, they play both ends of the court. They play offense, they play defense. They do, there's only 5 guys. Your impact on the overall play on the court is so drastic. It's not even football, where I think a lot of times we consider championships a quarterback in the quarterback conversation. And there's some fairness to that. I think sometimes it probably gets a little out of hand ranking championships for these guys, but at least they handle the ball on every single offensive play. And I just don't think that there's a like for like comparison in lacrosse. It's too dependent on everyone else on your team. And the conversation that I was having with people this week was, in 2014, Lyle Thompson, that quarterfinal against Notre Dame, arguably the greatest game ever played. Lyle in that game had 3 goals and 3 assists. He had 6 points. He played out of his mind. He was so good, and they lost. Meanwhile, in the semifinals this past weekend, CJ Kirst went over. Yeah. 0.0 assist. Ryan Goldstein, 0.0 assist, or 1 assist or something, 1 point. So between the 2 best players on that team basically contributed nothing. And someone's going to be like, oh, because someone already said this to me, if you don't think CJ was contributing even though he didn't put any points up, then you're crazy. I get it. Being on the field, he affects play. I get it. But he contributed nothing to the score of that game, and they still won. it is a wholly team game, and there's just not a way around that. So his championship means basically nothing to me in this argument. Only I think it's 11 schools have ever won a Division One national championship. And so you're basically saying that if you don't go to one of these like very, very top blue blood schools, you're just not, you cannot be considered amongst the best players of all time, because you're never going to win a championship. And that seems crazy to me. I don't understand this idea of how we're doing it and how we're talking about individual brilliance in a team sport. As for CJ himself, again, great player, but I think, like you said, he's not on my Mount Rushmore. Everybody's Mount Rushmore can be a little bit different. He's not even close on mine, to be completely honest. And again, it's not hate. He's great. If I was drafting a team right now, he'd be a guy I'd want. There might be a few guys ahead of him, but I'm certainly not turning down the chance to get CJ Kirst. But yeah, I don't know. I thought a lot of the conversation last week was a little crazy.
Yeah. And I'm with you. Like, people love to talk about the gravity that players have of, even if they're not putting up visible points on the board, it's, well, look at how they attract the defense and allow other guys to open up. And like, us as, people who watch sports, we recognize that, but your job as an attackman is to put the ball in the back of the net. So if you don't score and your team still wins, not that necessarily diminishes your role on the team, but why would I then say, like, oh, he won a championship, so I'm going to bump him above this guy? Because clearly you have a good enough team. Their team won in the semis without them playing well. And another thing I'll touch on too is, like, CJ is incredible at scoring goals. But out of all the guys ahead of him in points in a career, like, there's so many better assisters as well. So then where do we rank, like, the scoring the ball trump then also setting up your teammates on the stat sheet? Like, where does that get tossed into play as well? Because if we're going to talk about all around players, I want someone who can kind of do both and not rely on only putting the ball in the back of the net as an individual, because otherwise then you're just kind of out there as a decoy, which can help at times, but then at the same time, again, like I said, it's like, that's your one job. So yeah, no, I agree. And that's a really good point. And I'm glad that you made it, because that's part of my thing too, is that I don't think it necessarily has to be even, like, you don't have to do 40 and 40, but I definitely value guys who do both. And not necessarily saying that CJ can't do both, but he certainly wasn't really tasked with doing that at Cornell. He was much more tasked with being the bucket getter. And so we'll see, because I think in the PLL he might need to be more than that. So we'll see how he transitions into that. But for right now, I think that is probably part of the reason why I personally would not have him ranked any higher than a lot of these guys. So yeah, and we don't have to get into this as well, but that's another thing that we're not bringing up, is like the position that you're tasked with, or the what your coach wants you to do can drastically affect this as well. You know what I mean? So, if at some point at Cornell they were like, hey, we need you to, distribute the ball a little bit more, maybe we're having a different discussion. So I will put that caveat out there as well. But obviously that's a bigger conversation for another day. But
yeah, and I think you're right, though. I don't know that I can ever have him on a college lacrosse like Mount Rushmore, but if in 10 years he's just blown away everything in the PLL, obviously we're going to have a different conversation about perhaps overall kind of Mount Rushmore status
Absolutely.
than we are right now. So that is actually a very good transition into week 1 of the PLL season. That kicked off in Albany this week. One thing just to bring up real quick, we talked about it last week about the gear and about hoping that there was going to be some new gear. Before we get into the games, we got to say they did not really bring out new gear very much. I think every team has like some minor tweaks, and I will say I thought all of the tweaks were for the better. There's not a change that I saw that I thought made a uniform worse. But there was not much in the way of change at all.
Yeah, no, visually it was very similar to last year. I'm trying to like run back in my head, like all the helmets I think were the same. You know, gloves generally look the same. You know, I think some teams have bigger changes than others. I thought like the Utah's jersey, you can clearly tell, like, okay, they added numbers. There's a big, outline. You can see the mountains. But then like the Outlaws jerseys, the close up, we all I think agreed that, those minor details were awesome, but like on field, you can't even, see.
No.
I will say I did think the Woods uniforms looked really nice on field. I wasn't a huge fan of theirs last year, and I think the changes they made actually really helped. I know we talked a little bit about, the little trees on the collar. Still taking some getting used to. But overall, it's not bad, I guess.
Yeah, no, and again, I thought all of the tweaks, like you said, from relatively large, even though it was basically only one change with the Utah and the numbers, I thought looked good. I thought, like you said, the Woods jerseys that have been more overhauled. I don't know that, again, it's a big change, especially when you think that tree collar they have worn before. They just kind of brought it back. But all of them were good. So I'm just a little disappointed not to see more. But again, hopefully we'll hold out hope for the throwbacks and the indigenous heritage to bring a little bit more spice. But let's get into the games. We started out Friday night with the Carolina Chaos and their new look, new coaching staff. Basically everyone except for the defense has changed against arguably, at least on paper, the best team in the league, the New York Atlas. And the New York Atlas ran out to a 4-0 lead, but the Chaos came back and would not go away and ultimately just narrowly lost 10-8. We'll get into Atlas, I think, after the second game a little bit more. But what did you think of the Carolina Chaos?
I'm actually kind of impressed with them, which I wasn't planning on saying. This week, when we were talking about them last week, I was like, I don't feel great about where they are. And I think more so than anything, it was just because of the, no pun intended, chaos of a roster that we saw, change not only over the course of the offseason, but then even this week, leading up, adding Cross and some other guys. So I just wasn't sure what it was going to look like. And then, of course, New York gets that 4-0 lead, and I'm like, we were joking about over under 1.5 goals, and I'm like, this might be even worse than we were anticipating, But then they stormed back, and I know I don't really do moral victories, but for a team that, like we said, is one of the best in the league with the Atlas, and a team full of just, things unknown, I guess, for lack of a better term, like, I was pretty impressed with them overall. I thought they got good production from the rookies. Obviously, Blaze was Blaze with 12 saves. Nick Rowlett wasn't great, but, first came back in a while, and, they matched the Atlas in shots, caused 6 turnovers as well, so I thought defense played fine, and overall, I think they're going to be much better than I think we initially anticipated, but...
Yeah, so I actually, before the game, was like, I think Carolina is going to be probably in last place. But I do think that they're going to be better than we think they are. They're not going to be last place, getting blown out all the time, which I think is what a lot of the kind of consensus on the internet was that they were just going to be awful. And then, of course, that game starts and it's 4-0 before you even really know what's happening. And you're like, yeah. It's just going to be bad. But, I mean, even Blaze looked bad. Like those 4 goals, it was like, what is happening? Not that he necessarily would have saved them, but it just didn't look right. It looked like he wasn't seeing it at all. Like it looked a mess. And then, then it was like, oh, wait, hold on. We know what we're doing. The defense looks great. Like you said, Jackson Eicher, and the rookies on that team, I think were incredible. The big thing for me too was, especially again, they got down 4-0 and you're like, man, the defense isn't even good. Like that's the thing you could hang your hat on, was that defense, and it doesn't look good. And then by the end of the game, Jeff T had 1 point. Xander Dixon had 1 point. Connor Schellenberger only had 2. Like the guys that you need to shut down, they shut down. So I think that defense is definitely going to keep them in games this season. If they can figure out anything with this offense, they can surprise some people, and we are waiting with bated breath to hear where Jared Bernhardt signs. I know you have your notifications on. We're hoping maybe it'll drop during the recording of this episode. As of right now, 8:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, June 2nd. We do not have the answer, but we are holding out hope. But I know that, at least in my mind, Carolina is the place that makes the most sense from a lacrosse standpoint. I know that there are other factors and cap space and things going on, but Carolina is the spot that makes the most lacrosse sense. And if they got him, but pairing him with Jackson Eicher and Zawada and JJ Silstrop and some of these guys, they could turn some heads. They could change some things. And I think most of us left this game feeling a lot better about where Carolina is than we did, the 2 hours previous when the game started. So, yeah,
if nothing else, it just shows that they can at least hang with these other teams. Mm-hmm. I fully recognize that it's 1 week and they have to repeat this, but I think having 2 rookies have 8 points between the 2 of them, like leading your team essentially, and then you have the defense finally settled in on the back end. Like, if this offense figures it out and can get up to 10, 11, 12 goals, like, I'm not going to put them as, a top team, but they're going to surprise everyone, including myself, because, I mean, holding Jeff Teat to 1 point is a tough task.
Yeah, no, I couldn't believe that. And his 1 point was like the last goal of the game. It's not like, I mean, 1 goal is 1 goal, I guess, but it's not like he did damage earlier or anything. Like they kept him quiet basically all game. Yep. So I definitely an impressive result from them. Moving on to game 2 Friday night, the Redwoods, probably the most improved team again, at least on paper, taking on the now infamous Tewaaraton line in the Denver Outlaws. The Redwoods came away with perhaps the most impressive win of the weekend, 15-12. I was really impressed with the Redwoods. I thought they were going to be certainly better than they were last year. I thought they were going to be probably a good playoff team. But I expected a decent amount out of the Outlaws this year. So the way they went in and played and won that game was very impressive to me.
Yeah, and kind of the same storyline as the Chaos. Like Chris Cav going off, 5 points, 4 goals, essentially, especially like that's, not to say that I didn't expect him to play well, but I just wasn't expecting him to lead the team week 1. And then obviously Dylan Malloy coming back with 4 points himself. Andrew McAdory as well, like 4 points. Charlie Bertrand contributed. I mean, even T.D. Erlin had 2 points. They had just a complete team effort, honestly. And I thought Chase Erlin, for it being his first, I think it was his first start, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, only 47%, but I thought he made some pretty key saves, especially late in the second half. And I mean, realistically, like the Outlaws scored that last goal with like 6 seconds left, so it was really like a 15-11 win. I mean, that's I know where that doesn't reflect on the score sheet, but that's massive, especially like you said, like for us expecting quite a bit out of the Outlaws to get like no production from their midfield. I mean, they're gonna have to figure that out, because if you're getting zero production, like I don't care how many Tewaaraton winners you have on your team, like that's not doing anything. And especially when your defense doesn't slide to shooters, and you're given wide open lanes. And I mean, McElroy wasn't great, but I don't know how you're asking a guy to stop some of these shots that are just, I mean, gaps this wide, just left open.
Yeah, no, he didn't do anything, I think, wrong, but I also think that he's probably out of a starting job as soon as McNaney gets in there. But yeah, to your point, Jake Pacino as the LSM had more points than any midfielders. Like, that's not good. That is not good. Wiz and Brennan O'Neill did their thing. Pat Cavanaugh played pretty decently. Zach Geddes had more points than Pat Cavanaugh and any other midfielder. Like, that's not a great thing. So yeah, they are struggling, and we go back to the Jared Barnhart story. That I know that Denver is supposedly one of the teams that's right there, kind of vying for his signature. And the discussion was that he would run out of the box for them, and he could change things very much for them. I think he could help unlock Sam Hanley, I think, a bit, because he would probably become that primary initiator, and Sam Hanley could be more responsible for redodging and probably a little bit of kind of post-up shooting and stuff on the backside. So that could really help. Could help free up, Jackson Overbeek and Overbeck, I think is actually his name, and then Dalton Young and stuff. So that could be a really big signing for them if that happens. Because they've got to figure out this midfield, because that wasn't it. But like you said, I think the story is the Redwoods, and I think we all knew that they were going to be better. Again, on paper, they are the most improved team, but how well that actually plays out is a thing that you have to wait and see. Like, you never really know. Some of these teams look really good on paper, and then it's like, they weren't all that great. But like you said, I thought Andrew McAdory proved. I know there were some people, I'm not saying it was a majority, but there were some people saying that he did not deserve to be the number 2 pick. And I think he really showed why he was the number 2 pick. Not just scoring, obviously, the 4 points on 2 goals and 2 assists, but I don't know if you saw him playing defense, bodying up guys back at X and stuff, and just, again, probably not something he's intending to do. The PLL, I'm sure his coach wants him off the field on the defensive end, but knowing that if he gets caught over there, he's not going to be a liability is a huge thing. Like you said, Dylan Malloy was great. I had an interesting conversation this week. Someone was saying that when they picked him up, they always knew he was going to be the guy. And I was like, what are you talking about? That dude played 7 games over the last 2 seasons, almost exclusively running out of the box for the Atlas. Nobody picked him up thinking this is going to be our guy at X. I think the Redwoods thought he's better than what we got, so he's at least depth. But I don't think they got him thinking he's going to be our guy at X. And he played like he was their guy at X. So that was really cool. And then I tweeted out, talking about Chris Cavanaugh. If this is the Chris Cavanaugh they're going to get, great pickup. I am not personally big on him being the QB1. I don't think it's what he's the best at. He can do it. He did it at Notre Dame this past year. He can do it. I just don't think that's where you're getting the best out of him. But if you're going to set him off ball, let him, slip picks and play around the crease and stuff, and just let him finish. Wow. I saw him playing a lot like Xander Dixon this past weekend. And I don't say this to be negative about Xander Dixon, whom I love. I think Xander's great. I think Xander is a finisher. I think Chris Kavanaugh has other attributes. He can dodge, he can do other things, he can initiate, but I think he's best when that's not his primary role. When his primary role is kind of finishing, and then he can be very dangerous on dodging and initiating and re-dodging, especially, and stuff. I think if this is the Chris Kavanaugh they're going to get, and this is the way that he's going to play, kind of being a little bit more off ball, I mean, it may, we're going to talk about awards. It may make me change my Rookie of the Year pick because I was not expecting this to be the Chris Kavanaugh. And then you think about it, Sam English hasn't played. He's been out. So they look to be very good. And they definitely, I don't know about you, they shot up my rankings this weekend. I thought they'd be kind of a playoff team, but they might be trending towards my favorite. It's 1 week. I don't want to do the overreaction, but
yeah, I'm going to pump the brakes on that for now. I would like to see him do it again. It doesn't have to be this dominant, but just especially because they're that second team in my mind that coming into the year I had a lot of questions about. So I want to see him do it again, but you're absolutely right. And especially thinking about the Chris Cav pick, getting him at 10, if this is who we're getting week in and week out, like all of a sudden that looks like a steal. Because the fact that, at least for me, I had Chaos taking him at 5. If he plays like this all year long, all of a sudden now there's some questions like, okay, he could have been a part of the Chaos attack line, and instead now he's, killing it in Cali. So
this is where part of my thing about him, about if this is going to be who you get, that it's good, because I think coming into the draft, people were looking at him to be that QB1, and I don't think that's what he's best at.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I understand the idea of, if you're looking at him as a QB1, he slides. He slides down. And so in that respect, him at 10 wasn't a surprise to me. But if you think about him in this role, and then you think Owen Hiltwin at 8 in what should be largely a similar role, it's like, okay, although to be fair, I thought Owen Hiltwin a little high. But the one thing to your point though about seeing them do it again, they have Carolina next week, so there's a good chance they're going to do it again. Although, again, we talked about Carolina being better and that defense really holding them in the game. So maybe this is a good test for them. Someone that is going to be a high level defense for them to really test, but also isn't likely to put up a crap ton on the offensive end. So we'll see what happens this week, but I think they got a good shot at repeating again. So anyway, moving on to Saturday, the first game of Saturday's rotation was a 2024 PLL championship rematch. It was somewhat sloppy and at times a little boring, I thought, but the Archers do come away with an 8-7 win. That one was raining the whole time. It was at points it was pouring. It was a 1-1 first quarter. It was a little brutal to watch. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you play 15 minutes and only see 2 goals.
Yeah. And I think they both were somewhat early. The Archers goal, the second goal in that first quarter came with 8:40 left. And so it was a good majority of that first quarter where we didn't see a goal at all. And then it was another 3-ish minutes into the second quarter before another one got scored. So there was a period of time when I was like, oh, this is not good. It was very tight, very back and forth, very, I hesitate to say sloppy. It felt like week one with heavy rain. We talk about mesh these days being hydrophobic, and it's not as bad as what it used to be, but still it was pouring in that game. So, sticks are going to be sticks, and they're not going to throw the same. They're going to bag out a little bit, even with, modern tech. But the one thing that I was completely blown away with was Joe Nardella basically dominating the X. He went, the Whips as a team went 80%. I think that was not all Joe Nardella, but in fact, he was probably a little bit better. He was 13 to 17. I don't know what that breaks down to.
I was going to say, I think that was, unless Utah also put out someone else, because Sis was 4 for 17, and Nardella was 13 of 17.
The Whips have 15 wins, and I know.
I see what you're saying.
What's the Bernhardt on their roster? Jared or Jake?
No,
Jake. Jared's the one coming in. Jake is the one, and then who plays for the Outlaws? Jesse. Okay, so yes,
that's tough.
So
to figure out, man.
I know at one point Jared took a face-off and won it clean. Scooped it to himself. Everyone was like, "What the hell just happened? You went against Mike Sisselberger and you won it clean." So that was a big. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that important because the Archers did ultimately win, but only winning 4 faceoffs in that game was like, what is happening? I saw a big conversation about the wing play, and it felt like that was a big thing because Sis was getting clamps and popping them, but then they'd lose it on the ground ball. And I saw someone tweeted, I don't remember who it was, and I'm going to completely butcher what they said, but they basically laid out who Sis had 2 years ago as a rookie on his wings, and it was John Robbins was one. I forget who the other one was, and now John Robbins plays for the Woods, and I think it was Latrell Harris was the other one. Those were his 2 wings his rookie season, and now they don't have that level of guys, and it really showed the wing play was not great for the Archers. But one of my things that I've been contending for several years now is that the shot clock is the great negator of an elite faceoff guy. Trevor Baptiste has never even played in a PLL championship, despite being insanely dominant. We have, I don't know if this term means anything to you, because I know you're not a big soccer guy. In soccer, we talk about a luxury player. Is that a concept that rings a bell or anything?
Okay. Of.
So the idea of a luxury player is they're a very talented, skilled player that doesn't do a whole lot unless your team is already kind of everywhere else is very good. So
kind of like a final puzzle piece.
Yes. Yes. And in that respect, Michael Sisselberger as a freshman, as a rookie, was that kind of like final piece. The Archers were already like a very good, like very dominant team, both on offense, on defense. The big thing they were missing was a faceoff guy. And he was able to take those 1 or 2 extra possessions that he could earn, or and sometimes 11, like whatever. And they were able to do something with that. And he kind of pushed them over the top. But again, Trevor Baptiste, as dominant as he is, he's literally a PLL MVP in this league. And they can't get to a championship game. because the shot clock is the great negator of an elite face-off guy, and he can go 90% in a game and they'll still lose because they can't turn those possessions into goals. So I did a stat, Sis's rookie year. I think the number was teams that went over 65% or better at the face-off were 3-13. All 3 wins were the Archers. So, I mean, that really shows you that in a lot of ways, it's almost a negative to win the face-off, because if you can't score, you're giving them the ball. And it's one of the things that I think the 32 seconds on a face-off win has only amplified. It's only increased it, because if you can't score, now they've got additional time. So anyway, that was a long tangent. We haven't really talked about this game. Brett Dobson is Brett Dobson. I know a lot of people were saying he is the best goalie in the world. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I am saying that Blaze Reardon still has a lot to say about that. But he's at least right there. They're neck and neck. He was at almost 70% in this game. I think he's a huge factor for them coming down the stretch. And then Connor Fields was the one for me again, just taking over, picking up exactly where he left off at the end of the NLL season and taking over this game, and really kind of, in a lot of ways, kind of putting this team on his back and kind of dragging them to this victory. One more player to talk about was Sam King. Had 3 points. All 3 were assists in this game. I thought, we're talking about rookies this week. He was as advertised, and I think he's going to have a really, really good time in this Archers offense.
Yeah. And I mean, he had 3 assists on only 16 touches. So, if he can be that effective without even really needing the ball in his stick all that much, like, that's going to only make them even better. And we talked about this on draft night too. Like, the rich get richer essentially. Because I mean, he only took 1 shot, and still is second on the team with points. Like, he's going to have some fun over there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Even as midfielders, 16 touches was like nothing. The one, I guess, kind of thing maybe to talk about coming out of this game is Grant Ament stopped playing. I forget when exactly it was. I want to say maybe early in the third. Had some hamstring tightness. They did say later in the game that if this had been kind of like a championship or probably even a playoff game scenario, that he could have kept playing. It was more of like an abundance of caution that they pulled him out. But moving forward, it is going to be something to watch, because hamstrings are hamstrings and they don't really go quietly. So with him being right back on it next week and the week after that and stuff, it's just something to keep your eye on. I hope it's great. I hope it's good, especially as 15% of an Archers fan or whatever my number is now. I hope that he is good. They're going to need him probably throughout this season, but definitely something to keep our eyes on. And then the final game of the weekend was the back-to-back championship series champs. That is not easy to say. Say that 3 times fast.
Say it again.
Championship series champions.
Championship series champions.
All right. Well, that was only once, but but you definitely did it better than I did. So, whatever.
But I had to think about it though. I couldn't do it like off the top.
Okay. The back-to-back championship series champions made their first appearance of the season, playing the New York Atlas and running away with a 16-12 victory. This one was kind of all over the place. The Cannons kind of are who we thought they are. I don't know. I got nothing other than, yeah, they are who we thought they were. I guess the big kind of story coming out of this was Will Manny's return to the lineup after, I've read somewhere it was 18 months, but I feel like that's not even right. I feel like it's, I don't know, two seasons ago, he played for the Whips, led them in points, and then they cut him in training camp last year, and he was later signed by the Cannons. They never played him. No one tried to take him from them. I don't know. That whole thing was a mess. And then he re-signed with Boston and was geared up, ready to play in the championship series, and pulled out, I think it was 2 days before the start because of an injury. So this is the first time he has been on the field since the end of the 23 season. And it was, I really enjoyed seeing him. He dropped, I believe it was a hat trick. Yes, he had a hat trick. Yeah. So that was kind of, I guess, the big kind of story coming out of this. CJ Kirst looked good. Liam Entenmann did not look good. He looked human for probably the first time in several years that I've seen him play. I did not think he looked amazing. And as we talked about, Trevor Baptiste went for, looks like 70%. He went 70% and they lost. So add that to, I guess, another victim of the 65% rule. Yeah, I don't know. I can't, we can now talk maybe more about Atlas. I came away from this weekend wondering if Atlas are going to make the playoffs. That's probably heavy-handed. I will grant that. It's probably overreaction. But both their games this weekend, I just did not think they looked great. Like, yeah, they beat Carolina, but they didn't look good doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's tough as well, just because, like, I thought Boston was really, really good defensively, and they were aggressive. I mean, they caused 11 turnovers. Like, I don't care how many faceoffs Trevor wins. If you're turning the ball over, 21 times, but 11 of them are because of the defense, like, pressuring you, like, and that also means then that you have 10 of them that just came at your own, just throwing the ball away. And that's, I recognize it's the first weekend, but you already had one game under your belt. Maybe the rain played a factor. But it is kind of the tale of two sides where, game one, Jeff Teat has 1 point. Game two, he comes out and clearly made a point to be aggressive, 6 points, and still lose. And, Liam Entenmann, 14 saves, but only 48% save percentage. Baptiste, like you said, plays well, 11 ground balls, but still lose. So it's just, I think this team's going to have to try to find that happy medium of, you're going to have to score, across the board, which they did. A lot of guys have, 2 or more points. But defensively, if you're letting Boston go on runs like they did, like that to me was the difference in this game, where they'd go 2-2, 2-2, and then they went on a run of 3, and then a single goal and another run of 3. And then, like those types of runs, if you're not going to respond to those, that to me is where this team's going to struggle.
Yeah.
And maybe after week 1, they tighten that up. But, even letting guys like Ryan Drenner go off for 4 goals. I love Ryan Drenner. I didn't have him going for 4 goals. I didn't have Will Manny going for 3 goals off of an 18-month hiatus. Like, that type of thing just can't happen.
Will Manny, I would have had more so, although I think I would have probably put it more on Marcus Holman. But I think Will Manny, I think you could have expected some rust, even if Will Manny was still going to be Will Manny. You could have expected some rust. The funny thing about Ryan Drenner, I actually tweeted about Ryan Drenner before that game, just like earlier in the day. It wasn't even about him. Someone had posted some. I think there was some stat about it was the last rookies to have hat tricks in their starts or something. Something like that. But they had posted this picture of Ryan Drenner. Excuse me. they had posted this picture of Ryan Drenner, and I reposted the image and was like, if tilt was a sport, Ryan Drenner would be the Michael Jordan of it. And then later that day I turn on this game, and he comes down and he scores his first goal, and I actually had forgotten that Ryan Drenner still played lacrosse. I don't know why, but like I had completely forgotten. I had posted about him earlier that day, and when I saw him on the field, I was like, wait, what? I don't know why, but yeah, I would not have pegged him for this kind of game, but hey, he was up for it. He did everything that he needed to do. I think, again, maybe what the lesson should be is that Boston is better than we thought, more than it being about Atlas. Although I still feel like if you look at Atlas over the entirety of the weekend, I'm not getting good feelings. But maybe it's just that this team is better. This defense, we talk about Carolina's defense. This defense looks good. I know it feels maybe a little tough to say that when Jeff Teat goes for 6 points and Connor Schellenberger has 3, Mouse Jones has 3, and it feels like maybe it's a little hard to say that, but I really like this defense. Ben Ramsey being added to an already very good defense, and then Owen Grant and Jack Keelty coming in and playing just very, very well, like top to bottom. That they're 6. I've said it before. I think I've said that I thought Denver had the best 6, at least again on paper coming into the season. Boston might have the best 6 now.
At least after week 1.
Yeah. Again, overreaction, maybe. We'll see. It's just 1 week. But that they look good, and we will talk more about some projections, but they project out very well. They have Utah this week, so that will be a very, very good test to see. It's the litmus test of what their season is going to look like as we move forward, for sure. So yeah, I guess that can bring us to the PLL season predictions. We're not going to go through every single award and stuff. We're just going to kind of talk about some kind of overall predictions and maybe some of the big awards. First things first, who do you have as the playoff teams? A reminder that this year, for anyone who doesn't know, they've modified the playoffs a little bit. Last year, and I think even the year before, it was just the top 7 teams. Number 1 got a bye. This year, they're actually using the conferences. The top 3 teams in each conference, I believe it is, make the playoffs. The top 2 get a bye. And then I can't remember, do you know off the top of your head, did they, the 3 teams make it, but then the playoffs aren't based on conferences, right? Or are they?
I don't believe so. I think the conferences are only used for the top 3 in each, and then it's like reseeding or something like that.
Yeah,
we can
that's
double check.
What I feel like too.
But...
So yeah, who do you have making it as the 3 teams from each conference?
Man, that's tough.
It is. This is really something we should have done last week. I texted Brandon after we recorded last week and was like, we did no projections on the season. And I can't decide, when I was doing this, I can't decide if it's easier or harder having seen 1 week. Because now you have a little bit of a feeling, but it's also only 1 week. And it's like,
Well, and we haven't even seen Philly play either. So, now, but for the sake of the discussion, I think in the West, I think Carolina still misses the playoffs, despite me feeling more hopeful about them after week 1, which they would have been my pick anyway, I think. But I just have more hope in or faith in Carolina or California, excuse me. And maybe California turns out to be a top 2 and we're not even talking about them for that final spot. But yeah, I think Carolina misses in the West. And then, man, the East is a gauntlet.
Yeah, the East is tough.
It's hard because Maryland, I feel like in my mind, I want to pick them, but they're fresh off of going to the championship, and I don't want to like disrespect them in that regard because I do think they have some good players. But I think I'm going to have to go with them missing the playoffs as well. I like the additions Philly made. I know we haven't seen them yet, and maybe next week I look like a fool, after their week 1, but I still think despite New York's issues this weekend, I think they'll be fine. Last year I picked Boston to win the championship, and I think they got better this year. So I think they'll be fine. And I have a lot of questions about Maryland and the way that their roster will change throughout the year. Especially after seeing, I know it was raining and it was bad conditions, but seeing their veterans struggle the way they did. I love their young core, but I just don't know how fast they're going to gel and, elevate themselves as a team. So I'm going to go with Maryland and Carolina staying out of the playoffs.
I have the exact same teams. I really, really debated dropping New York, and that sounds crazy. But I've really walked away that unimpressed with them this year, this past weekend, I guess. And so I really debated swapping them. But coming into the season, this was my 3: Boston, New York, and Philly. And I thought, let's pump the brakes slightly on them not making it. We'll kind of ride with what I would have said last week. And but kind of like you, there's something about the makeup of this Maryland team that doesn't feel like it's gonna quite click. And I shouldn't say I love, because I'm very anti-whips. But I think Jim Stagnita is an incredible coach, and I do think that the Whips are capable of being in the championship this year and missing the playoffs completely is kind of where I'm at. Neither one is really going to surprise me all that much. So with that, they're kind of the one team right this second I just don't have anything for, so I have them out. Carolina, I really debated, but my question was like, who do I think they're really going to jump? The only thing I thought was maybe Denver. As weird as that sounds, that Denver would drop. I'm checking just to make sure that was not. All right, I don't think it was. Okay, I was hoping that wasn't JB1 news.
Don't worry, I've been checking.
Okay. The only thing I thought was that maybe Denver, sort of like I was saying with the Whips, like maybe they just don't quite click. They've got a bunch of new pieces. They're all trying to figure out how they work. And maybe it just doesn't quite click, or it clicks too late or something. So that was the only thing I thought, but I think they'll figure it out. So yeah, like you, I think Carolina's probably on the outside looking in. Although also like you, I feel very much less convinced of that after seeing them week 1. I could see a scenario where they slide in, they do just enough to kind of sneak in the back door. And then I don't really think that even if that happens, that they'll really knock anyone off. It would most likely be kind of a one game and done kind of thing. But I'm not going to be too terribly surprised based off of week 1. We'll see, middle of All-Star break. I might be like, yeah, nah, they're not doing it, but so far. So, okay, so we both had the same teams on the outside looking in. Who do you have winning it all? And again, we're not entirely 100% positive on the playoff bracket system, so we're not going to go game by game, but let's just go overall champion.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of strange after your last comment about the Outlaws, but I do have them winning it all. And I debated I tweeted my picks last year, so I decided I'm going to tweet them again before week 1. And as I was typing it, I thought to myself, everyone's going to say this is a biased pick. And I completely recognize that looks that way. But going into week 1, at least, I felt like they made all the appropriate adjustments, maybe outside of goalie, which I still think I was kind of banking on McElroy making the jump at least a little bit. And if not, McNaney comes in and plays well, fresh off of a good, college season. My belief is a little shaky after week 1, but I still do believe they'll figure it out. I don't think they're going to get, 1 point out of their midfield again. I think that'll get better. If they sign Jared Bernhardt, who knows how many games he plays, if that helps. Eric Law didn't play week 1. Does he bump a midi? How does that work? Wiz's first game back in a while. Pat Cav's first game was an outlaw. So I think overall they made enough moves, to win it all. But dropping 1-3 week 1 is not a great start.
Yeah, but it's also not a death blow either. You're not winning championships in week 1, so I don't have any like catastrophic warning bells about them, but it did kind of look like I don't know that it certainly doesn't seem like it's going to click as quickly as we would like it to.
Yeah. As much as they're marketing the all Tewaaraton attack line, I think we need to slow down a little bit. Just if it works out, great, but let's not act like they're just going to be a juggernaut, right away.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not. Maybe the answer is, Pat plays a lot like Chris is playing and is playing off ball. One thing I'll say, and we didn't talk about this during the game, I can't believe still how many times that ball comes down the field and they don't even look at Brennan O'Neill's half of the field. Like not even they don't look at him. They don't even look at his half of the field. Like it completely boggles my mind. And I tweeted or I texted in our group chat that I think I owe Josh Shawada an apology because it's looking like it might have been more of a game plan thing to just constantly look off Brennan O'Neill than it was a Josh Shawada thing. Because it just,
which is a horrible game plan, by the way. That is awful.
Yeah, I don't think that he has to touch the ball every single time down the field. But when you're going 3, 4, 5 possessions without him touching the ball, like that is not good. It's not good. So, they've got some things to figure out. I am going with who I was trying to think, would I have picked this team last week? And I think I would have, but it's one of those things that's so borderline. I'm not sure that this isn't revising what would have happened last week, but I'm going with the back-to-back championship series champions, the Boston Cannons. Like I said, I really like that defense. I really like Will Manny and Marcus Holman being on that roster. I also think one of the things that I didn't love when they were in Utah was that there were so many times when, and you could hear it on broadcast, they'd be in the huddle and Chris Bates was talking, Adam Gettleman was talking, Marcus Holman was talking, and Will Manny was talking. And at times it often felt like there were too many people trying to be the coach. And it's a very small sample size in Boston, but I feel like Will Manny and Marcus Holman both respect and maybe even more than that, maybe are on the same page with Brian Holman, having coached together for so long, that it doesn't, again, small sample size, it has not yet felt like that to me. Now we'll see what happens. If it's a close game, if they're down by some, maybe we'll start seeing it. But as of yet, it hasn't been that way as much. So hopefully that works out for them, for their benefit. I really like, we talk about the Kavanaughs and the Bernhardts. Colin Kirst? Is he the one that's the goalie for them? Colin? Okay.
Yes.
I really like
Colin
Kirst.
Hang on. Now,
Now we gotta look it up
because they have Connor and they have Colin.
So Colin's the one in goal,
Colin's the one in goal. Yes.
and Cole is the one that plays for the Redwoods,
Yes.
and CJ is the one that was just drafted. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Got it.
So I like Colin Kirst a lot in goal for them. I don't think he is, Blaze or Dauber or anything like that, but I think he is good and he works well with that defense. So I just don't know. I guess the one kind of weakness they have is at the face-off. So if they get into a game where they're going to need some extra possessions, maybe that comes back to bite them. But also, Jake Naso still, we were told he was signed, but
I was going to say.
It's not been announced, so he's still out there. I think Connor Farrell has a role that he could play. I think there are guys that they could go pick up if they're just really not feeling good about their face-off guy. But again, like we've talked several times throughout this episode, I think the shot clock is the great equalizer for a face-off guy, and when you have a defense this good, you can prevent those face-off win possessions turning into goals, and then push it up the field to your guys who can score those goals. So I think they are the one for me. Moving on to let's talk about two awards. I'm gonna save MVP. Let's talk Rookie of the Year. Who you got Rookie of the Year so far?
I got one that I think is going to surprise some people.
Okay.
But I'm going with Aiden Carroll of the Maryland Whipsnakes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a hot take. I recognize that this could look awful at the end of the year. But coming out of college, I was just very impressed. Thankfully, I got to see him in person in addition to seeing a couple of his games televised. I loved the step he took in college. And I think coming into a Maryland's team that, like we said, I do question what their line looks like. I just don't. I do feel like at some point he will play a bigger role than I think he probably should based on the names on that roster, which is why I went with him over some other rookies who are more well-known, because I thought about Chris Cav, I thought about some other guys, but I just feel like Aiden Carroll has the best opportunity to kind of explode, do whatever kind of he wants, for lack of a better term, and ultimately come away with Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. It does feel a little bit outside of the box. I think as the rookie class this year goes, he's at least seen as kind of lower down the pecking order of some of the names out there. I'm going with Jackson Eicher.
That's a good pick too.
I think every player has positives and negatives, and like reasons why you think they will win and reasons why you think they won't win. Jackson Eicher, I think, has the opportunity to kind of become the man for that offense, whereas most of the rookies won't be. They'll be third, fourth, fifth options on their offense. I think Jackson Eicher has the opportunity. In fact, you might even say after game one, he's already kind of established himself as that guy. Again, barring they get Jared Bernhardt, I think he could be kind of what Brendan Nickturn was for Chrome a couple years ago, kind of becoming that guy, the like go-to guy for them. So the one kind of caveat to that is that he is going to be playing on a worse offense than a lot of these rookies are. So, he's not getting a whole lot of help there. So how much can he do himself is kind of the caveat. Whereas when I look at like Chris Kavanaugh, it's the opposite. I think there are so many guys on that offense that there's going to be games where it doesn't click for him or whatever, and Dylan Malloy's going to go off or Andrew McAdory's going to go off or something. So yeah, I'm going to go Jackson Iker. I think he's got all the tools, but there's going to be, I think this really feels like one of the few years where I think there's a lot of competition for Rookie of the Year this year.
Yeah.
Especially so far, we've already seen so many rookies doing big things. So, but that being said, it's usually not the person that we think it's going to be after week one. Connor Schellenberger had a crazy week one last year, and then somewhat through injury and then somewhat through, kind of inconsistency, kind of fell off. And Tyler Carpenter, I think week 3, nobody had him as Rookie of the Year, and then, he ended up winning it. So we'll see there. Let's move on to the big award of the year, and that is MVP.
Man, this is tough.
It is tough.
There's so many guys that I could see taking the next step to just carry a team. I took Brennan O'Neill. I saw him as we already know he has the talent. I just thought that last year was, first year, you're coming in, you're kind of now the dominant guy in my mind.
Yep.
Week 1, like you said, don't know why we're looking him off as much as we were, but you saw when he decided, okay, I need to get to the rack. Not only did he get to the rack, but he scored a beautiful goal with a twister. Like, if he can do that consistently, it doesn't even have to be that nice of a goal. It could just be, basic step downs, over the top, whatever. Like, he, to me, has the potential to really take a massive step this year. And especially if the Outlaws are as good as I think we're kind of thinking they could be, I think it should come fairly easy, but obviously he's got to get help around him as well.
Yeah. No, in a lot of ways, I think that's the frustration with Brennan O'Neill, is that you see it when he wants it, nothing stops him. Nobody's getting in his way. Nobody's preventing him. He can shoot the lights out. Like, him and Miles Jones are the two guys that I'm like, just go to the goal. Like, no one can stop you. You're too big. You're too strong. You're too fast. Like, you're too skilled. No one can stop you. And I really thought about picking Miles Jones because I just think his game is so good in the PLL. I think his game is so good, and I think so far he's on track this year, admittedly, one weekend in, to be a lot like his 2021 season, which I think he should have been at least an MVP finalist. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But I think in 2021, if his name was Tom Schreiber, he wins the MVP. The only thing was that he wasn't Tom Schreiber. But for me, and I picked him last year, so maybe I'm riding with the wrong person again year after year. But I'm going Connor Fields. I think he is so good and so important to the Archers. The one kind of caveat, I guess, to that is that, Tom Schreiber's also going to probably take a lot of attention in terms of MVP. I don't know exactly how they determine MVP. I think there's some voting. It's all a little cloudy. So I don't know if there's such a thing as like splitting the votes, which happens a lot, like in basketball and stuff, where, if you have two guys on the same team, the votes get split, and neither of them does as well. But yeah, I think coming off that box season, that NLL season, he's at the top of his game, and barring some kind of injury, I just don't see him slowing down. And I think there's at least an argument that Connor Fields is the best player in the world right
I won't argue against it.
at least offensively. I know they tend to get the kind of plaudits in these kinds of conversations because it's very easy for even, people not in the know to see an offensive player put the ball in the back of the net and go, okay, he's pretty good. Defense is obviously a lot harder, and goalie probably doesn't get enough recognition and stuff, but at least in terms of offensive players, I think there's a very good argument that he is the best player in the world right now. A few guys will have some things to say about that, and a few that aren't on PLL fields this summer will have some claims, but I think that Connor Fields is at least in that conversation of the best player on the planet right now, and thus I think he will at least be in the MVP conversation come the end of this year. With that being said, let's move on to some kind of notes, I guess, mostly just some kind of quick things. The first one I will start with is a makeup for last week. We talked about Delaney Schweitzer, and I said that I didn't think she had been drafted to the WLL All-Star game. I looked it up after the show, after we recorded, and realized that she was actually drafted in the WLL All-Star game. She will be playing for Team Izzy. Izzy Skane is the captain, which, makes a ton of sense. Izzy Skane being a Northwestern person, I think. Oh, did I just put my foot back in my mouth? I'm pretty sure Izzy Skane went to Northwestern. Anyway, so we will actually get to see her at the All-Star game this year in Kansas City, which is going to be pretty awesome. I know you're going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to go. I think that'd be so fun.
I think it'd be a fun event. And it's middle of the States.
Sure.
So it's, I'm hoping that it works out and they can end up, getting the team there at some point. But we'll see.
I think that stadium would be really cool, too.
I think it holds like the perfect amount. So
yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's like the right size for the PLL. The other two relatively quick things. First, it was announced earlier or later last week, I guess is the correct term, that CJ Kirst did have surgery on his injured hand. He is likely to be out for 6-ish weeks, give or take. That's a big bummer. I think it's going to be a big problem. Going back to our projections, could be a big impact for Philly and their playoff chances, especially with Zed also being down. So I was really hopeful that, being that it has already kind of been 6 weeks since he injured it, obviously him continuing to play with it and use it slows down that healing process. But I was hoping that he would, maybe he could avoid surgery and maybe only have to have, another 2 or 3 more weeks off of it. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be closer to 6. So that's definitely a big problem for Philly and CJ Kirst fans. And then the final note is something that we have been talking about all night, and that is that Jared Bernhardt, it was announced at the end of last week before the games on Friday night that he was going to be coming back and signing with the PLL. We do not know where yet. That is still up in the air. Did you just check right now? Is it still up in the air?
Yeah, there's been nothing new as of now. So the only thing, new today was just that the Whips may actually be back in, apparently.
Yeah. That was such an interesting twist.
And it was weird. Everything was coming from Field Yates, and then Dan Arestia broke that. And so now I'm just refreshing everything, just trying to see like any sorts of information, because I feel like this is day 2 now, where we're kind of thinking it's going to happen, and then it's just radio silence. So
yeah, because it was supposed Field Yates said it was supposed to be decided last night, and so everyone was like, okay, cool, we're going to hear. And then all day today, there's been no news. And then Dan said just before we started recording, an hour and a half or so ago, that there still had been no decision, that there were still teams discussing it, and that's when it had basically gotten down to, at some point, basically California and Denver were the two teams, and then all of a sudden it was Maryland is also in it.
Yeah. Well, it started out as like they named like 7 of the 8 teams, and it's like, yeah, they're all interested, obviously. Like, and then finally got down to 2.
Yeah, like we talked about, Carolina's the one that makes the most sense lacrosse-wise. He can basically have his pick of places to play. They also have a good amount of cap room. I don't think it's the most cap room, but they have a good amount of cap room. The other thing that people seem to be confused about is how this situation is working. Dan has said that he will probably get into it once the announcement is actually made and we can kind of transition from where is he going to go to how he got to where he was going to go. My thinking, and I don't have any inside information on this, so please take it with a grain of salt, is that this is kind of like an MLS deal, where the league has kind of put on some money on top of whatever teams have available. So for the sake of round numbers, let's say the PLL has said, we will pay $50,000 on top of that to basically secure that you will play in the PLL for, however long the contract, 3 years or whatever. Again, round numbers. So $50,000 a year for the 3 years, we will pay you this amount of money on top of what a team can pay. So then he goes to the teams and, California says, well, we've got 30,000 left in our cap space that we can pay you. So they can put together a package that's $80,000 because it's the 30 that they have and then the 50 from the PLL. Carolina says we've got 25, but we can, you can play wherever you want here, as opposed to their project where they, can play you in these specific positions or whatever. Then there's also, I know Kyle in our group chat from Outside the Box was saying that Jared also has an agent, which I guess a lot of players in the PLL probably don't have. But being that he was dealing with the NFL and contracts, he has an agent. So that's kind of complicating some things because there's agent fees and stuff like that. So again, take that all with a grain of salt because I don't have any inside information, but that's kind of the way that I've been looking at this in terms of like, a lot of people seem to be tripped up with the idea that it's a single entity. And so the PLL technically owns all of the teams. So aren't they bidding with themselves and stuff? So, that's at least how I'm looking at it, how it's helping me explain, even if that's not 100% how it's going down. So anyway, with that being said, that's the end of what I've got. Anything you got coming up this week, Brandon, before week 2 kicks off?
No, just think I'm going to actually be able to get to watch every game, I think, at least most of that last one.
Yeah.
I am shooting a Rapids game actually Saturday, so,
I know,
that'd be cool, but
last week you were talking about how you're not really a soccer guy, and then I went to your page and saw how many soccer games you shoot,
yeah.
and I was like, how are you not a soccer guy? Come on.
Yeah. I do pretty much every home game they have, but they just happen to have a period of like 3 weeks between games, so I've just been hanging out. But good news is I think this one, that last game starts at 5 p.m. so 5 p.m. my time, so I'll be able to at least watch 2 quarters, 2.5 quarters maybe. So
yeah.
I'm excited for that. But
well, I hope that the rest of your move goes smoothly and that you have internet soon and
yeah,
don't have to scramble to find some next week. But that is it for this week. We want to thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Run Out. If you got something out of it, the best way to help us is to share it, post it, send it to someone who'd be into it. Ratings and reviews on Apple or Spotify all make a huge difference as well. And if you've got thoughts or questions or just want to argue with us on Instagram or Twitter, we are Run Out Pod. We are at Run Out Pod, or both of our handles are right here. Please feel free to tell us what you think about what we've had to say. We will be back next week, but as always, we will see you guys in the comments.